goodness, everybody likes that PhD tag from Mumbai University. Everybody likes that, you are a part of the academic circle, but not many people know the administrative lacunas and the challenges. I said, I'm a good teacher, but then you don't know the other side of it. But he's, said, you take care, I'll support you. So when there's a saying in our Indian culture, jab hukum raji to sab raji, if the vice chancellor decides, then who is going to stop, And fortunately, the first thing I always do, the first Chanakya principle I always follow, which I'll talk today, is that even if you're good and capable, always have a mentor on your side. So remember one thing, Chandragupta was an efficient leader, but still he required Chanakya to mentor him. So I started thinking, I'm with the Mumbai University almost for the last 15 years. I did some major research projects, but that time I was representing the industry. And then of course the book Corporate Chanakya came out, a lot of things, but I said, no, I may be good in my work, but I require some academic mentors. And that's why I went to Shubhada Joshi, madam, who was the head of the philosophy department, and told, madam, what do you think? I said, of course, I endorse it. So what the vice chancellor is saying is right. I said, madam, I thought you will give me an excuse not to take up this responsibility. And I said, no, you have to take it up. It's a good thing because you've done so much. Then I said, okay, madam, but I require you to be part of it. So as Kavita, madam, rightly pointed out, both of us put together, started this whole institution. And, I always believe that she's the founding director and I was a deputy director. And now since she's no more there, fortunately, I've become, the director, so I'm heading the institution. But let me tell you the other side of it. That was the entry and starting the institution. But I always looked upon Mumbai University as an institution that has stood the test of time. When the whole world was talking about the national education policy post 1947, I'm not talking about the national policy of 2020. I'm talking about the early education when the Nehru era was there. We did some fantastic work. I'm not going to get political here. Everybody has contributed. The generation of the IITs and IIMs, when it started, I think management was the buzzword, And we are fortunate that Mumbai University also took a lead in actually giving management education through Jamnalal Bajaj and various other institutions that we have. So when you suddenly look at it and saying that leadership is the key thing, and said, okay, leadership may be the key thing, but the foundations is in management studies. So it's always saying that you stand strong on the shoulders of the previous people. So I remember as a student getting into JBMS was almost equivalent to getting into an IIT or an IIM. So I said, here is Kavita ma'am, such an humble, leader herself. And I just went up to her, and every time we meet for our HOD meetings, we have this whole meetings, and as Mani sir was telling, how it just goes on and on and on. But she's always there to tell me, find a way out, support me, and the kind of a respect that we have. And I'm so glad that, she's also part of BMA, Bombay Management Association. So thank you, Kavita ma'am, for once again inviting me for this particular session. And she's really a great leader. And thanks to the whole team. And once again, thanks Dr. Mani for this particular wonderful opportunity. So what I'm going to actually speak about. So I was, thinking about a few points, as I say, some powerful points. So first of all, I like to speak upon the concept of leadership itself. Okay, I think it's becoming a buzzword everywhere. So what according to us is leadership? Maybe I'll deliberate something about it. But then I'm going to introduce a few concepts of Chanakya, which probably can be practiced and experienced by all of us in our respective organizations. So I think these are the 2-point agenda that I have. But I think after that, we should have more discussions. In India, the wisdom model is discussion, not just, instruction. So there is something called as instructional leadership. So it's like, command and, demand. So that's what many people think about one way of leadership. But I think we have to go one step below and saying that Chanakya believed in deliberations. And if you look at our ancient Indian management models or, knowledge systems, it's all about Guru Shishya discussing. Even in the battlefield, Arjuna has to discuss with somebody like Krishna to get clarity. So I think with this group, I don't think it's instructional because sometimes in students' case, we have to give instructions, because they may be new in the field. So that's one model. But here, I think it will be more discussions and deliberations. So I think at the end of it, I would, invite more of discussions towards the end. But as I said, before you discuss, let me present a few ideas. So let me begin by actually, starting off, how do we differentiate or what do we look the commonalities in these two words called as management and leadership? Okay, so even though they're interconnected, okay, people are now considering them as separate branches by itself, maybe specialization as they say. So even to be very frank, many years ago, I also did not know the difference between the two. But this thought had actually come into the academic world many years ago in US. And if you read one of the most famous management books, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, there he gives a very nice instruction or distinction between leadership and management. And quote Stephen Covey, he says, management is about climbing the ladder fast, and leadership is checking whether the ladder is on the right wall, unquote. Okay, so leadership is about efficiency, productivity, let's get it done, revenues, cash flows. No doubt about it. That's very, very important. So it's all about climbing the ladder fast, your GDP, your growth, okay, important. But leadership is asking whether the ladder which you're climbing is on the right wall. And he gives a very beautiful metaphor where he says, you may have climbed the ladder fast, but you realize you're on the wrong wall. You landed up somewhere else. So I think leadership is about questioning, okay, whether we are in the right direction, whether you've gone off track, whether, the captain of the ship is making sure that, it's in the right direction so that finally we achieve the goal. But at the same time, both leadership and management are Siamese twins. A leader is a manager and a manager is a leader. Okay, because leaders cannot just give over there and talk about vision. We have to get it done. So if you look at all the leaders across the globe, they were great administrators, they were great organizers, they were team builders, and they could inspire people also. So even though we are looking at, Chanakya at this particular point as a person who was a leadership guru, Raja and Rajaguru. So Chandragupta Maurya was a Raja and, Chanakya was a Rajaguru, but the whole Arthashastra that we're talking about written by Chanakya is all about managing a kingdom. Yes, my dear friends, managing a kingdom. So the Kautilya's Arthashastra, which has been the subject of my PhD, actually has got 6,000 sutras or formulas. Sutras are like formulas written in the 4th century BC of how to manage a kingdom. Okay, so how to manage a kingdom. And I have always taken some of these points from Arthashastra and tried to apply in the modern day management and leadership. Just to begin with, probably, the 17 books I've sent the list to, Mani sir, but just to give you an idea. This is my first book, which is called Corporate Chanakya. Some of you must have seen it also. And this is my 17th book before the lockdown. And that's Chanakya Niti. Okay, so they are very popular. The hard copy or the soft copy, all of them are available. And in the lockdown, I wrote 3 more books. So the count actually becomes 20 books. So all of them connected with Chanakya. Why did I show these books? Because I first started looking at, Chanakya from a management angle, a corporate angle. As I told you, I represent the industry. I've been, running and guiding a lot of businesses myself as a consultant, as a mentor, but using the Chanakya model. But I remember when I was doing my PhD with Dr. Shubhda Joshi, she said something very nicely. She said, Radha, it's good to write on Chanakya's management model, the corporate model. And she's been part of, a lot of corporates herself because Shubhda Joshi, madam, my guide, also was part of the ethical committee of Hindustan Unilever. So, it's quite surprising that it's not that she doesn't understand the management world, saying that, the biggest problem even corporates know or either is fighting for and want to know is solution for ethical dilemmas. As you grow higher and higher, you will get to this one point that is it right or wrong? It is profitable, unprofitable. It is good or bad. All these questions, as Shakespeare put it very nicely, saying that to do or not to do, that's the question. So Shubhda Joshi madam is always tells finally, the industry also has to come to academics to find out the solutions for philosophical problem. And interestingly, in philosophy, as they say, the academics, they say one of the highest degrees is PhD, doctorate in philosophy. Your subject can be anything, but finally you'll end up with a PhD. So finally, okay, to manage, you should have your values, your vision, your ethics, your morale, and most important, your philosophy clear. So I think that's exactly where Chanakya comes in. He is a leadership guru, but I think he has to be introduced more as a philosopher. So we have management philosophers. The people who are doing PhD in management finally come to that point of understanding what exactly is the role of a manager. He derives his own philosophy. Since, I come from the philosophy department, my roots are there, and I have an MA in Sanskrit also. studying the Indian Shastras, you can sum it up, the whole Indian Shastras, be it the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Upanishads, or even for that matter, the Artha Shastra, or the Puranas, you can sum it up in one word: the quest to understand what is Dharma. The quest to understand what is Dharma. So as they say, Bhagavad Gita is to understand what is Mama Dharma. What am I supposed to do in this battlefield? Not only the battlefield of Mahabharata, but the battle called life. And Indians have always spoken about getting your Dharma right. So Sri Krishna is advising, saying that, it's a Dharma. You have to do it. You don't have a choice. Even if you have a choice, you will regret not fighting the battle later on. So friends, Artha Shastra is actually a book based on Artha Vyavastha or economics. So many people call it a book of economics also, because, Artha Vyavastha is also how to manage a country. But I think it's also a Dharma Shastra. Even though not called specifically like, Manu Smriti as a Dharma Shastra, but yes, Chanakya spoke about clarity for a leader. And I think the real philosophy is understood by a person when he or she sits quietly without any disturbance and is wondering, what is Mama Dharma? Mama Dharma Kim? And this question, if you have a clarity, you can lead a great organization, a great country, or most important, yourself. So I think it all starts with self-management. Talking about, BMA, it's a great institution. I've been part of it. I've given some lectures, and even if you're not aware of this, Manish sir and Kavita ma'am, everyone present over here, I actually launched one of my launches of Corporate Chanakya at BMA. So this is historical for me. In 2010, or was it 11? I don't know. Of course, in 2010, 15th of August, we had launched Corporate Chanakya in the Mumbai University. We had a gathering there on Independence Day, but I did many launches and talks. So BMA was one particular place where I actually did a book session. So thank you, BMA. And that time I was looking at Corporate Chanakya as a management book. But today I look at saying that management and leadership. So friends, what according to me is leadership? Leadership is a thought process. Of course, it's a competent skill also, because people map the competency on leadership. I can tell you something very interesting as a case study. In the last lockdown, been so many webinars. Fortunately, a lot of my friends keep calling me, and I always believe never say no, because I'm also on a mission mode to bring back ancient Indian culture in a modern format. So in one of these particular sessions, I got an invitation from TCS, Tata Consultancy Services. And what I realized is that, they wanted to actually speak to their, 4.5 lakh employees. I said, wow, that's quite an amazing platform to speak. And of course, it was centered around the International Yoga Day, the 21st June. There were a week-long series and month-long series. And I was, of course, only one of the speakers. But in that particular thing, I realized that a regular meeting and conversation on philosophy of the organization is very important. So TCS believes that, from time to time, we need to talk to our people, communicate our vision. Chanakya said that. And I'm so glad to see that as a part of BMA. Bombay Management Association is actually having this Friday fundamentals. I'm so glad because, we have this concept called, thank God it's Friday. There is a hotel chain in US by that name. I think in India also we have a few outlets. But that is almost like a sense of relief. Oh, 5-day working week, Monday to Friday and evening. Thank God it's Friday. Now we don't have to work for the next 2 days. But I think what BMA is doing is fantastic to actually give thought leadership at the end of this Friday so that we can deliberate and discuss more about fundamentals of leadership and management. So friends, that was a few initial thoughts of leadership. Now I'm going to go back to Chanakya and bring out a few concepts, which probably I've deliberated, practiced, and to some extent preach. Okay, so the philosophy of Chanakya has to be practiced and preached. PPP, if I want to put it like a model, So what is Chanakya's philosophy? I'm going to speak a few ideas about it. Then how do you practice it? I'm going to give you a couple of models. Okay, and this is where Chanakya's philosophy has to be practically implemented. So let me start with the philosophy of Chanakya. Remember, Chanakya was an acharya, a teacher, a person who's training up the next generation of leaders. So what kind of students did Chanakya have? Or as a teacher, what kind of students or the next generation does he wants to create? Today itself, we had our Prime Minister addressing on the National Education Policy 2020. And if you heard him, he said something very nice, said that, the next generation, we should teach them how to think. Okay. We have to develop curiosity. We need to develop, the ability of innovation and research. And it suddenly got me back and said, wow. And exactly that's what Chanakya said. Children need to be curious. We need to imbibe the quality of questioning, research, inquiry, critical thinking, and most important, also train them in how to think. And you will be surprised to know that Chanakya actually spoke on this as the Prathama Vidya. Okay, so, we are all part of the board of studies in the Mumbai University. Kavita ma'am also said, one of the biggest things that we do is actually to design a curriculum which will be taught to the students. So I think board of studies is actually the brain, and it's not a single person. Of course, it's a committee of experts who sit down and decide. And I've been been fortunate to be on the board of quite a few education institutions, not only my own, but I started seeing that the teachers are actually thought leaders, and they decide what is to be taught. And if you look at the Artha Shastra of Kautilya, okay, he is actually designing the syllabus. So in the 6,000 sutras of Artha Shastra, which is divided into 15 books or 15 sections, I would say, it's got, of course, 150 chapters, 180 different, sections and all. But Prathama, the first book or the fundamental thing that he says is that he's defining the education curriculum. And that first book is called as Vidya Samuddeshaha. Prathama, the Adhyaya, is about Vidya Samuddesha. So what is the meaning of Vidya Samuddesha? It is actually designing the curriculum. Okay, I'll be using a little bit of a Sanskrit here for two reasons. Number one, I love Sanskrit as a language. It is not just doing an MA in Sanskrit. I've been fortunate to do that. By the way, I'm also a management graduate. I've done a couple of management courses, but Sanskrit is a thinking language. So I'm going to use a few Sanskrit in my, deliberations today. But also very important, if you're not aware of this, that this month, Shravan, okay, Shravan Mahina, the government of India has actually decided to promote this as Sanskrit Masaha. Okay, so it's a Sanskrit Masaha, and the Shravan Purnima, that was the Raksha Bandhan day, was actually called as Sanskrit Dinam. So friends, the Prathama Vidya, while designing the syllabus, the next generation of leaders, remember he's a Rajaguru and he's training prince to actually become a king later on. And what is the Prathama Vidya that he's talking about in Vidya Samuddesha? And that Prathama Vidya is called as Anvikshiki. Anvikshiki iti Prathama Vidya. And I like to quote from the Artha Shastra. Pradipaha sarva vidyanam upayaha sarva karmanam shashwat anvikshiki mata. Okay. What is anvikshiki? So let's define that first. Now, for most of us, including me, when I heard it for the first time, I said, Anvikshiki? It is almost like a word which has been introduced to us. But I would say that, this is a very, very, very common word in our Indian culture, in our Indian literature. And consciously or unconsciously, we are already using it. But we have forgotten that this is actually the part of a management and leadership training. Okay, and it is a subject. It's a vidya. Okay, so Chanakya is training a king, and he says that we need to teach 4 basic subjects for anybody who wants to be a leader. And quote, Anvikshiki Trayi Varta Dandanitis Cheti Vidya. Anvikshiki Trayi Varta Dandanitis Cheti Vidya. So what are the 4 subjects fundamentally required for become leaders or managers? First of all, Anvikshiki. I'll talk about it. Anvikshiki Trayi, Varta and Dandaniti. So what is Anvikshiki? Anvikshiki actually means philosophy. Okay, philosophy. In fact, I've written a complete book on that. It's called Inside Chanakya's Mind, Anvikshiki and the Art of Thinking. So it's philosophy. He says a leader should be very clear what is his philosophy or way of thinking. Second is Trayi. Okay, he should read the Vedas. There were 3 Vedas being defined. Now we call it Chatur Vedas. In the 4 Vedas, the Atharva Veda got added on later, but initially it was, at least till Chanakya's time, it was Rig Veda, Samaveda and Yajur Veda. And now we call 4 Vedas. So he says you have to study the 3 Vedas during those days. So you should know philosophy, you should know the Vedas. By the way, if you study Vedas, Vedanta, the philosophy is only one part of it, but it's actually Paravidya and Aparavidya. What is the meaning of Paravidya? Worldly knowledge and spiritual knowledge, Aparavidya. So many times people get a little bit confused. I don't want to learn Indian scriptures. Why? It only talks about moksha, moksha, moksha. In fact, I remember one mother telling me, I don't want my child to be too much into spirituality. I said, why? Because he may become very goody-goody and he may not know the realistic problems of the world. Because you're too spiritual, you start looking at everybody as good. But you know what? Sometimes, people may cheat my child, so I want him to be smart, not just spiritual. And I said, oh, wow, what an understanding of spirituality. So that means spirituality can make you a doormat where everybody thinks bechara, he can be treated as, a harmless guy and we can harm him. But, that's a misunderstanding of, the whole scriptures of India. Vedas actually have Ayurveda. It has also got Dhanurveda. These are all Upavedas, as we say. But not many people understand that Vedas is not only about Brahmagyan or Brahma Vidya. Vedas is also about how to rule the world. Okay, and the concept has been there in the Vedas. So as I told you, it's very practical implementation. Today, if you have the corona problem, we are looking at Indian solutions. And I know BMC, Bombay Municipal Corporation comes in. A lot of doctors are telling, you just do the basic three things. What? Garam pani piyo, steam lo, and घर पे जो काढ़ा है वो बना के पियो. Okay, so your haldi and your ginger and your lavang, all those kadha you make and drink. So I said, where does this thought come from? Is it a dadi ma ka nuska? Of course, it's traditionally come to us through a dadi mas, but the reality is that there is a logical base to it. All of our spices have medical properties, but if you look at Ayurveda, you'd be surprised. It's all a documented scientific medical process. And we have great, acharyas of Ayurveda, Shushruta, and so many other acharyas. Charaka Samhita is there. So all these are part of Vedas. So many of us today are, of course, looking at the Western world, and nothing wrong. Bombay Management Association now hosted some of the greatest Western management gurus also, including Peter Drucker during one point of time. So we are not against Westerners, but we are saying that, in India also we have a thought process. So you're saying Anvikshiki, Chanakya, you should also know worldly knowledge. That's all there in the Vedas. Why reinvent the wheel? Everything is documented out over there. In fact, in the Sanskrit department of Mumbai University, there was this whole discussion on Indian manuscriptology. There's a course that we offer at weekend program, Indian manuscriptology. And you'll be surprised. There are so many manuscripts in this particular country which we don't even touch. Like if you go to the Mysore University, where the original Arthashastra is there, I was quite surprised to know actually there are 60,000 manuscripts still physically available. I've seen it myself, okay? And the government of India, I think it was under the Vajpayee government, they started a national manuscriptology kind of a project to count and collate all the manuscripts of India physically and digitally. And they discovered more than 1 crore manuscripts still available in India. And here is the good news. It's not just about spiritual Vedanta and Brahmagyan. Of course, that is the ultimate, which leads you to Brahma Vidya and Moksha. You'd be surprised. Almost 90% of India's manuscripts are actually SOPs, standard operating processes in various fields. Dr. Madhavi Narsale, she was telling us in one of our webinars that, in our Mumbai University, right in the Sanskrit department, we have a few manuscripts, 200 of them, And when she was looking at it, she collated and she realized there is one manuscript, how to make crackers, firecrackers. And of course, the kind of, the chemical things that you have. In fact, I remember one of the manuscript actually talks about the food recipes in Mahabharata and Ramayana. I never thought about it. Okay, so all the ladies who are trying some new YouTube channel recipes, you can still look at Indian wisdom of trying something new. So these are all documented. How did the spices come to us? You'll be surprised to know the spices have been gone through a very scientific process to understand the medical values. So it's all there. That's what I'm saying. First is Anvikshiki. I'll speak about that in detail. But the second one is, let us all look at, studying the Vedas. The knowledge systems of India, I would like to replace the word if you don't like the word Vedas. The knowledge systems is documented in the Veda, the Vedic culture that we have. Anvikshikitrai Varta. All the leaders should know economics. Okay. Of course, during the olden days, it was, Krishi, Gauraksha, and, cattle rearing and farming. That was, and trading, of course, Krishi, Gauraksha, Palana. All these 2-3 things was the major. But today, with the scientific discoveries. Today, a YouTuber also can make 6 crore rupees annually. Yeah, I know of a person who's a YouTuber. He's 25 years old or 26 years old, and he makes 6 crore rupees annually. And he's a qualified engineer. He says, I don't want engineering. So it is very clearly said by Swami Vivekananda that the strength of every country is when they look at alternative and new economic models. You cannot have everybody coming and looking at the same models of getting a job. Today, anyway, is a generation of job creators rather than job seekers. But you know what? Whatever you do, you can experiment with an idea. You can think like an entrepreneur, but finally, it has to make financial sense. Now, I've been guiding a lot of startup companies and I thought that's fine. You may have a great idea. You experiment on it with a mentor, but finally, after 3 years, you have to make profits out of it. So don't just talk about business ideas. Try to make your business convert into profits. So you should know how a balance sheet works, how the cash flows are managed. How you should know that the debt equity ratio. I have a lot of finance experts here. I don't want to get into theories of finance, but Chanakya was very clear. A king needs to have understanding of economics, Varta, Anvikshiki, Trayi Varta, and Dandaniti. What is Dandaniti? Political science. Okay, Dandaniti is also called as political science. And as you know, unfortunately, we have looked upon political field equal to politicians. So we always, politics is bad. Politics is not bad. Politics is a science. Please understand this word. In our Mumbai University, we have one of the very prestigious departments of civics and political science in the Kalina campus. Like we have our management, we have JBIMS, we have a political science department, and the professors are amazing. They have contributed at the global level. We have an economics department. Some of the greatest, professors who have contributed to the Indian economy come from our economics department, from our own University of Mumbai. So if you look at it, the strength of any particular university is to give a holistic knowledge. So leader should have holistic knowledge. So he should know philosophy, Anvikshki, Trayi. He should know all the subjects in the world. It's like, you should know a little bit of everything. And finally, you can specialize in one thing. Like going to an ice cream parlor, you taste everything and you like this, you take a double scoop. But the reality is that the world is coming, and especially our national education policy is talking about liberal education. Try everything and then find your taste. Okay? Taste everything to find your taste. Because everybody's taste may be different, but till you taste it, how do you know it? So I think liberal education is trying maybe a credit course on chemistry with a combination of mathematics, maybe with, Sangeet Shastra and also culinary science. And maybe you'll discover you're meant to be a great chef. But, you can experiment, but don't keep experimenting forever. Find your Swadharma and Swabhava. This is what Chanakya says, when he's actually designing an educational course, he's keeping in mind that everybody is unique. Everybody can't be equal. Please understand this. Equality is a very Western concept, but uniqueness is an Indian concept. So everybody has to be in the same uniform. Why? There are different colors. There are different ways of looking at things. And in fact, it says, in our Indian philosophy, you want to find God also, you find your unique path. Okay. So there is a saying, Bahuratnaya Vasundhara. This whole universe is of so many beautiful gems, Bahuratna, different experts of different fields. Why are you limiting everything to only one field, one thing? So that's where the rigidity comes in. So even if you want to find God, you can find your method. We have seen in various houses, So maybe the father is a Krishna Bhakta, the mother, or the father is a Shiva Bhakta, mother is a Krishna Bhakta, the daughter could be, Rama Bhakta, and one child could be saying, I don't believe in God. That's okay. So I don't not even a Bhakta. So what is very important to know that is a particular approach. It is trying to give us an option to try different things before you decide what to do. And then of course, you should study your political science. So what is the framework of leadership course? The framework is to make sure that let me now go and focus on one subject in detail, because as I give you, this is a Vidya Samuddesha. So all of us, who are organizing so many seminars, lectures, nobody likes one speaker, We should have varieties. So one day, as rightly pointed out, in our own Friday fundamentals, we had a musician speaking. You have somebody speaking on Chanakya. You'll have somebody speaking on financial models. It's good. Good to have variety, good to have different flavors. Why not? Now, Chanakya was very, very clear that, a leader is the one who should have an exploratory mind. Okay. He should be like a lifelong learner. Okay. So let me now give you the complete explanation of the first subject. This can be a complete picture, but I'm going to focus on the Prathama Vidya, which is called Anvikshiki. Okay. So I've already explained that what is Anvikshiki, Prathama Vidya, and it says Pradipah Sarva Vidyanam Upayah Sarva Karmanam Shashwat Anvikshiki Mata. So, there is always, when we do our part, there are a lot of traditional part, and then there is something called as Falashruti. Hanuman Chalisa 40 बार अगर आप पढ़ोगे तो ये फल मिलेगा. देवी स्तोत्र ये करोगे तो ये फल मिलेगा. If you go to a temple, if you climb the mountain and go to the Devi, you will get this kind of a desire. So this is not about being result oriented, but as there is sankalp se siddhi. What are you going to achieve? And that's actually a very good way of thinking. It's called MBO, and in the management field, it's called management by objectives. So if I start doing something, Chanakya is very clear in saying that what's the objective, what is the strategy, and what is the results that you want to achieve. So it's like MBO, or some people call as KPI, key performance indicators, KRAs, key result area, and the academics were API, annual performance indicators. Now, is it a good sign? Of course, it's a good sign, because you cannot just, keep walking and discover your path. You should define your path and walk it, and maybe make the journey more fun. So leaders need to have a clarity. So what is Anvikshiki? He defines it very clearly in the Arthashastra. He's so specific. Chanakya is like very, very specific on saying that if you want to study, why you should study, the logic is given, and what is the end result. Pradipah Sarva Vidyanam. Anvikshiki, philosophy, and the right thinking gives you a clarity on everything that you do. Imagine a leader who is confused. And Corona problem has actually given us an exact example of leaders being confused in what to do and what not to do across the globe. Okay, it's not only India or in a particular state. So what is important? It's a trial and error method. Of course, a lot of first-time decisions are trial and error method, but Chanakya gives you a process also, how you should experiment with ideas. Because finally, leaders have to take decisions, right? But Chanakya says, no, leaders should not take decisions. Leaders should consult experts and arrive at a decision. Very, very different formula, okay? Because, many people say leaders have to take a decision. No. Chanakya says leaders have to arrive at a decision. How? Take the public opinion, okay? And especially in democracy, everybody has got a voice. So, float an idea, take opinions. Then, of course, sit with experts. There's a difference between expert advice and public opinion. You should take both. And then everybody should discuss, debate, Shastrartha, even in the legal terms it is said, if there is a case being presented, they look at the previous cases, what has happened, what did the judge take a decision. If I'm not sure, I take a bench along, sit down. A Raja should also have his Mantri Parishad, discuss, debate, and finally together arrive at a decision. Good leadership is arriving at a decision as a team. That's why, always seen in committees, there are fights. The chairman is supposed to be a wise person, isn't it? He listens to everybody, and he makes everybody feel involved in the decision. That's one of the very good points. So Chanakya says it's very important to have a way of thinking so that it can guide you in decision making. So Pradipaha Sarva Vidyana. So whatever you want to do, you should have a Deepa, Pradipaha. All the wisdom that you have, all the subjects that you learn, all the Vidyas finally gets its power in thinking. So if I'm a chemistry guy, finally I land up with a PhD, right? I'm thinking about chemistry. I'm experimenting with chemistry. So in the same way, Anvikshiki is about thinking. Okay? Anvikshan. If I get into the Anvikshiki in detail, you'll be surprised. I've found at least more than 30, 40 different meanings of Anvikshiki. Okay? Even though R.P. Kangle, one of the greatest professors from Mumbai University, he was at Wilson College, a Sanskrit professor. He translated the 6,000 Sutra of Arthashastra of Sanskrit into English. And Bombay University Press actually used to give this book. Now, of course, Motilal Banarasi Das brings it out. But he says as a philosophy, but if you read the different, readings of Anvikshiki or the different translations, there are so many meanings. In Pune, in the Bhandarkar Institution and various other, research institutions, I found so many different examples. So let me quote Anvikshiki and its meaning. So Anvikshiki is a quality, of course, of a leader. It also means Anvikshan. Anvekshan means enquiry into a particular problem. For example, CBI, Central Bureau of Investigation, if you translated that into Hindi, अगर आप अनुवाद करें तो it केंद्रीय अन्वेक्षण ब्यूरो. Anvekshan, okay? It's very, very clear that you have to think through. Again, coming back to the management terminology, there is a methodology and it is called as root cause analysis. I'm sure many of you know this particular theory. So when somebody comes with a problem, you know, okay, we need to investigate, get into it. So now we have a very famous example of Sushant Singh who committed suicide, you know. So the Bombay police investigated and they have one thing. And now his father says, no, there is something, the investigation is not right. So the Bihar police gets in and the CBI gets in, isn't it true? So what is CBI doing now? Central Bureau of Investigation is investigating in their own methodologies. So if you want to be a good leader, you should have investigating skills. Yes, my dear friends, because leaders are the final decision makers. There is a saying, you know, about leadership. The buck stops with you. You know, if the organization is good, fine. The organization is bad. It all depends on the leader. What is the quality of leader? Good decisions arrived at through deliberations, discussions. So I've been very fortunate to be a little small part in the national education policy. You know, we at Bombay University, Kavita ma'am knows that, you know, we are a part of so many committees, you know, they keep calling us. And I remember, you know, the national education policy actually has been a deliberate discussions with so many academicians across India, across the world. It's almost took 5 years. You know, and Sridhar sir, one of the people who came to Mumbai University, and then he called me to Bangalore and we've decided, discussed a lot of things. Today he was giving statistics after Modi ji's speech. And he was telling the kind of effort that we have put, you know, it's amazing. It is not about right or wrong, but it's all about deliberations. And finally, you know, it's all about how teachers implement it. So what's very important is that it's investigations, very good quality of a leader, okay, or a manager. You should know, because many times we get stuck up in symptoms. Okay, symptoms may not be the reality. They are an indicator of something going wrong. Okay, so you should know how to investigate symptoms with a training and arrive at a logical decision. That's Anvikshiki. Anvikshiki is a logical, rational process of investigation. It's also a critical process of investigation. Okay, so let me give you an example, a very simple example of symptoms is only as an indicator, but the root cause, how do we arrive at? Simple example, let's say you have a stomach ache, you have a stomach upset, let's say, you know, and you try something, ghar ka kada and all, or whatever, you know, pudina, and we have hajmolas and all this, it's not going. So after 2-3 days, you're not able to find a solution to the problem. What do? You go to an expert. Okay, so Chanakya always says that, you know, when you can't solve your problem alone, go to an expert. So you go to an expert, a doctor. What does a doctor do? Okay, the doctor has got a training and has an experience in investigation. So that's a lot of people say, you know, they actually test their doctors. And I know there's this guy who was telling this, you know, I never go to a doctor who is less than 40 years old. Why? I don't want a doctor to do R&D on me. He says, I'm not against, you know, the young doctors, but what I'm saying, if I want to really find out the root cause of my problem, I require maturity and experience. So what is it? Basically go to a doctor and say, no, Dr. Ji, pet upset hai. Doctor is now going to ask he or she symptoms. He said, kab se pet dukh raha hai? No, sir, maybe 3 weeks ho gaya, I'm trying something. Okay. And he'll go and test. Kab se dukh raha hai? Have you eaten something wrong? How long? And then he'll physically do a test. You know, he will try and touch different parts of the body. For a common man, a stomach is an area of your, you know, on your belly. But for a doctor, he's already trained in the science of, you know, thinking the physical parts of the body, the anatomy. He is diagnosed it. He knows this. And you put your hand and test in various parts, and he knows it's also got a large intestine, a small intestine. You got, you know, different parts. You got a kidney, you got a liver. And then if he's sure, he said, okay, don't worry, it's in the air, you know. So don't worry. It's like, you know, if you have a flu here in the rainy season, everything need not be corona. Okay. So say, don't worry, it's normal. But if the doctor is not sure and saying that the symptoms is something different, it's not a normal case, then he'll send you to a specialist. Okay. So an expert also has an expert advisor. So then he'll go and say, okay, now do this test and come back. You do an X-ray or whatever and come back and say, okay, listen, congratulations. Like, what happened? We have discovered your problem. Okay, अन्वेक्षण किया है हमने. What is that problem? We discovered that you have a kidney stone. And what do you say? Doctor, why congratulate me? You may have found the problem. But I'm not free from the pain. Doctor says, okay, I'll find a solution to it. I'll have prescription, drink water. Let's wait for a week. It can flush out. Otherwise, try this pill. And later on, the third step is, you may have to go for a small surgery or whatever, maybe a painless surgery. So remember, the whole process is actually anvikshiki. Symptoms need to be tested with an expert. Along with the expert, he needs to diagnose it. And if you cannot find it, go to the super expert. But find the root cause of the problem and find a solution. And that's why you always say this, don't be just a management consultant or an advisor, but get the end result. Okay, that's very, very important. As management practitioners and leadership coaches, I'm sure this group is of leaders and leadership trainers and coaches. You're all Chanakyas in your field. Till the solution is not found, then Chanakya says, don't stop. Stop not till you find the root cause of the problem and remove the problem itself. Finding the root cause of the problem is only the first stage. But removing the problem itself is the major role of a consultant, an advisor, a guru, a teacher. And that was Chanakya. And while defining Anvikshiki, he says something very clearly. He says, in a Sanskrit shloka, I like to translate that into English. One arrow may or may not kill the enemy. One arrow may or may not kill the enemy. But a man using a sharpened intellect, man or woman, okay? So, intelligence is unigender. A man using a sharpened intellect can destroy the king along with his whole kingdom. He can even kill the child in the womb. So an arrow may or may not kill the enemy, but a person using Anvikshiki can actually destroy the whole king along with his whole kingdom. That is where the power of intellect, investigation, and Anvikshiki comes in. Can we apply this in the field of leadership and management? Of course. Because leaders, one of the major role is to give direction, to look at it, investigate it. And since we are all in the field of management, there are levels of leadership also. The first one is like, when you become a team leader, a team manager. But yes, that's one part of it. But you go and then actually going to become HOD. Maybe, you're having 10 people under you. Later on, you maybe become a CEO. Okay, so the whole company is under you. But, I'll tell you, the CEO also would report to a chairman. Okay, the leadership level is different. For example, in Tata group of companies, got so many CEOs, and each of them is a leader by itself. Bhaskar Joshi, you must have heard about him. Bhaskar was actually a fantastic leader in innovation. He created Tanishq. He created, the whole chain, the fast track. He, of course, more known for Titan Industries that he started. When HMT was the only brand that India had, he made Titan. And Titan is like one of the most world's largest selling watches. Not only in India, I've seen, in Malaysia also, it's a very big brand. Tanishq itself has got, multiple brands within it, Raga, and then this and that, so many other brands. So, a leader. So if Bhaskar is CEO of one of the divisions, he has to report to hire, a chairman. The chairman could be Ratan or, Cyrus, who had a problem. And then, of course, we have one of the CEOs of TCS, Chandrasekhar, has now become the chairman. But then chairman also reports to a board. So don't think that the chairman is the highest. So there are levels of leadership. So the board is the one which actually controls even the chairman. Okay, depending on the size of the company. So Chanakya actually is telling that all the deliberations and discussion to arrive at a decision should be a board decision. And that is what we call as Mantri Sabha, or the parliament in today's case. So what is saying that deliberate, discuss, fight, argue, respect each other's opinion, but finally arrive at a decision. So leadership is all about inquiring, investigation. And in the army, there's a saying that it's always better to, before going to the battle, spend a lot of time in planning. And therefore it is said in the army, the more you sweat during peace times, the less you bleed during war times. See, Chanakya is a war guru also, but he says planning matters. Sharpen the saw before you actually use it for cutting. So, he's using your intellect, and which is the deadliest weapon in this universe. The deadliest weapon is not the nuclear bomb, okay? It's the human intellect. They say misguided missile can be the most destructive. But you know what? The most destructive weapon is a misguided intellect. Don't you think terrorists or the antisocial elements are not intelligent? They're super intelligent, and if you look at the planning, meticulous. Today this crimes have also moved from, physical crimes to digital crimes. But if you look at these hackers, can't even beat them. And therefore, I always tell you, your biggest enemy could be younger than you. The young boys and girls sitting over there in front of the computer and the laptops don't even know what they're thinking. And if you don't guide them in ethics, it's a very dangerous thing. So that's why Chanakya is actually guiding the intellect towards optimum utilization in the right direction. Anvikshiki. Of course, technically speaking, I can even go into details of saying what is Anvikshiki. He says, Sankhya Yoga Lokayata. All these are again Indian philosophies. Anvikshiki is a combination of Sankhya Yoga and Lokayata. So in India, we have, Shata Darshanas, Sankhya Yoga, then we have, Mimamsa, then we have Vaisheshika, then, Uttara Mimamsa, then of course, Vedanta. All these six philosophies, and of course, Jainism, Buddhism, all these are there. But Chanakya is a philosophy studies and saying, when I'm training a leader, I'm training you in Anvikshika, philosophy by itself, but it's a combination of three, Sankhya. Sankhya as a philosophy comes in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, Sankhya Yoga. Of course, we have yoga as a specialized subject. We have Patanjali's Yoga Sutra and Charvakya or Lokayata. Lokayata is very, very important because they are worldly wise people, or at least they believe what is very pragmatic in approach. So a leader should also be very, very practical. So Chanakya doesn't talk too much about moksha for a leader, because you can become lazy. That's one of the very problems in our particular country, that sometimes spirituality has become an excuse for unproductivity. Okay, Bhagwan dekh lega. And that's why we should know that spirituality is not about, moksha. Spirituality is also about efficiency and productivity. And Bhagavad Gita points it out very nicely. Yoga karmasu kaushalam. You are actually a yogi. Your real yoga is excellence. Very famous book, In Search of Excellence. One of the great management books in the earlier days. So, a spiritual person is actually an excellent guy. He can't give an excuse of, Bhagwan dekh lega. Therefore, Kabir ji said something very nicely. Kal kare so, aaj kar, aaj kare so ab. But we actually have this postmortem attitude. Aaj kare so, kal kare so, parso. Itni bhi kya jaldi hai, jab jeena hai barso. So we have this whole attitude that kaam chalta rahega. It's an eternal work. We may be gone, but the work continues. No. I think we need to understand the value of time. You need to value resources. So I think that's where management thinking comes in, and saying that, you need to be philosophical, but you also need to be a practical philosopher, or what we say, realistic philosopher at Chanakya would put it. So friends, this is at a very, very deep thought level that Chanakya gets into the dynamics of how a leader is trained in thinking. Of course, there are every question that has been answered by Chanakya in the Arthashastra. How do you manage economics? How do you recruit people? So the second chapter that comes in is called as, Amatya Utpattihi. What is Amatya Utpatti? How to create your ministers, how to select your ministers. Because a leader is not a good leader if he is a one-man show or a one-woman show, as they say. So leader is the one who creates more leaders. So you have your backup plan. So you're a captain, so you need to have a vice captain. So how do you select the vice captain? How do you train? So, leaders also require training. There's a training process. There is an education process. But selection of the right seed before you actually farm it. So that's also very, very important. I like to take up one more concept before we open out for discussions. So I spoke about Anvikshiki. I will also talk about a Saptanga model. Okay, very easy to understand, very practical model. So I'll give you a little bit of a background of what is Saptanga model. Sapta Anga. Sapta means 7. So again, going back to Sanskrit. Ekam Dvini Dvaye Chatwari Trini Chatwari Pancha Shatta Sapta Ashta Navadasha. So if you look at the number 7, it is called Sapta. I think most of us can understand it because it's used very commonly. What is Anga? Anga means part. Okay. So Chanakya is actually creating a leader who has to manage a whole kingdom. So typically, when students are going through an education course or an educational program, they have some basic questions. And one student would come to Chanakya and says, Guruji, what am I doing? So a lot of people who join engineering, a lot of courses, they get confused, why did you become an engineer? Because everybody's doing engineering, I also have to do an engineering course. And I remember somebody telling this, बेटा जिंदगी में जो करना है कर ले, पहले इंजीनियर बन जा या तो एमबीए का डिग्री ले लेना. So to be very frank, they actually are not doing it for the sake of doing it. It's like a herd mentality. So let's do something because everybody's doing it. Otherwise, what do you do? And especially I've seen a lot of girls telling this, it's a nice way of postponing my marriage for 2 years. So education keeps you occupied and you can tell your parents, listen, I'm studying still. No, but I think a good student, even though he or she's doing an education, sometimes asks those fundamental questions, what am I supposed to do? Maybe I'll get a job. And maybe the teachers will help you get a placement. But the reality is that your first placement can be done with the help of an education institution and the brand. But let me tell you, your first placement doesn't guarantee the success in your career. Okay, the first placement can be happening because of maybe your marks, maybe the brand that you have, you're from JBIMS or any other institution. But your performance matters. And in the field of management and leadership, your performance is going to be very different. In fact, there's a research which says that a person will actually shift 3 different careers before they could find and settle down in one role. Even in one company, you do multiple projects. So 3 different. So the first job can be there because of your qualifications and the brand, but the second, third one is all your performance. So friends, you have to understand this, that the student would generally ask Chanakya, what am I supposed to do? A brilliant student will know the basics. And okay, you're studying the Arthashastra in this particular Gurukul to actually become a great leader. So leadership training, right? So okay, what is a leader supposed to do? So I'm going to be a king. Okay, my father is a king. I'll go back as a king. So in a lot of business groups, we have this, family managed businesses. So you're already, day one, you come to the school, you think you are a CEO. Why? Because your father is a CEO or a father is a chairman. But that's arrogance. Just because you're born in a family of businessmen doesn't guarantee that you will be a good business leader. You require still training. That's why in our Shastras, even a Ram, who is a born leader, having the qualities of good leader, still has to go undergo training at the Gurukul under, Vashishta Maharaj, Vashishta Guru. So I think everybody should take, training of leadership and management very seriously. But the good student is the one who asks these fundamental questions. What am I supposed to do? And Chanakya is very happy and said, wow, I got a student who's asking the right questions. And then, okay, beta, you are going to be a leader. You have to manage a kingdom, lead a kingdom. And he has the next question. So every question leads to another question. And students are like that, inquisitive, wanting to know more. Today, at least you have Google to get some basic information. But remember one thing, Google search is not research. Okay, Google search is not research. Google search is collection of information. And today it is information pollution. You still need to have a basic conversation and a discussion with an expert. That can never be replaced, And artificial intelligence can never replace natural intelligence. So you have to go to your guru and have a chit chat, formally, informally, okay? A lot of people in this generation doesn't like to be guided by teachers. Finally, you'll end up with a PhD also, you require a guide. So this student is asking us, okay, I'm supposed to be a leader. Okay, I'm supposed to be a king and you're training me, but what is a leader supposed to do? What do you mean by, leading a kingdom? Chanakya goes, okay, I'll answer that question also. A leader is the one who runs a kingdom, and a kingdom consists of 7 parts. If all these 7 parts are kept properly, okay, if all these 7 parts are managed properly, that means you have led the organization or the kingdom correctly. Okay, so good. So what are these 7 parts? It comes in one sutra among the 6,000 sutras of Arthashastra. Quoting in Sanskrit, Swami Amatya Janapada Durga Kosha Dandamitra iti Prakritiya. Okay, I'll quote it. Swami Amatya Janapada Durga Kosha Dandamitra iti Prakritiya. Unquote. Let me translate that into English. Okay, Swami. Okay, the 7 parts first starts with the Swami. He's a leader, king or queen. For today's generation also we can add that. Doesn't mean we never had, efficient queens in the past. We are. But just for consideration, Swami. Amatya, mantris. Janapada, citizen. So in a country, we have a king, good council of ministers. But your praja is also important. What is the point in having a leader who calls himself a leader, but nobody follows? Swami, Amatya, Janapada, Durga. In the olden days, it was called fortified city. So if you look at the olden days, movies also, India or Western culture, you'll find Bahubali movies. So it's a big fort and, you don't allow the enemy to get in. Or Helen of Troy, it's all about getting into the fort. So it's all protected. So that's Durga. And in Marathi word, it's in the Marathi language, this word is very much used for the 400 Durgas or Kilas, the forts that Shivaji had. That was the strength of the Maratha Empire. So a kingdom consists of strong Durga. Swami, Amartya Janapada Durga. Kosha, finance, very important. A king should make sure that his particular kingdom is economically strong. Treasury, so the economic part of it. Of course, we had a very fantastic model, before the banking system came in. It was called the temple economy. Most of our temples are very rich, and people, religiously give their, dakshinas or, dan to a temple. And you see all the temple treasuries, okay, across our country, every small temple also. And somewhere, we have still not understood the Indian economic model. Indian economic model is very feminine in nature. What do you mean by feminine? If you look at economics as a thought process, the males and the females think differently. Yes, that's why, we actually call it Lakshmi. That's a very feminine way of looking at it. So the male and the female, they have a different sense of understanding, the feel, the vibe of money. So, for man, traditionally he's been a bread earner, but that doesn't mean women don't understand it. So the Griha Lakshmi actually manages the finances. So if Chanakya gives a lot of importance to women being participative in financial discussions, very important. If you study the Arthashastra, he's actually asking the Raja Mata and the Raja Patni to actually contribute to financial discussions. Because as I say, demonetization taught us that, every wife had a secret account which the husband did not know. So the women know how to manage in their own way of, saving, spending, whatever. So coming back, Swami, Amartya Janapada Durga Kosha. The treasury is a very important pillar of India. Danda. Danda can be translated into many words, but in this reference, it is called the army. And Mitra, ally. A king never leads alone, so he's got friends. A leadership role is very lonely. No, but you can have many leaders and you can have an association like this, BMA platform, Bombay Management Association, various other industry platforms. So let me summarize it. What is a great kingdom? A great kingdom has got its 7 anga, saptanga in place. Swami, a good leader, along with Amatya, good counselors and ministers. Janapada, happy citizens. So happiness quotient is already considered. Janapada, Durga, okay, good fortified city infrastructure. Kosha, well-managed finance, treasury. So everybody's paying taxes in the right way, but also getting benefits from infrastructure and everything. Kosha. Danda, the army is strong to protect itself from internal criminals and outside enemies. And Mitra, foreign policies, allies. So my dear student, if you want to be a good leader, which I'm training you, make sure all the 7 are in place. But remember, you are the person behind the whole show. You have to be an ideal leader. Remember this? So it's called, Swami. So that's why he's giving leadership. So all the 6 starts with the first one, the quality of leader. And Chanakya would define him as Raja Rishi. A very, very important. What kind of a quality? Not just a Raja, but a philosopher king. Socrates called it, philosopher king. But even Ramdas Swami actually mentioned Shivaji as Shrimanta Yogi. In richness, in power, but you're a yogi. A detached spiritual person, but leading the organization effectively. So friends, again, another example in the Bhagavad Gita. Janak Maharaj was a leader, but he was called a Raja Rishi. He was the one who would actually solve Dharma Sankat. So, there is this instance in the Ramayana when, who is going to be the king. Rama has already gone in one verse. Dashrath is gone. Bharat comes back and he's shocked and he goes and tells, to Ram, sorry, you become the king. My father did something wrong, but you come. Ram says, I cannot. But now you do. So what is? So they call actually Janak Maharaj and he's actually having a sabha and he tells them what to do. So please understand this. A Raja Rishi is a good king to manage his kingdom, but a Raja Rishi also guides other kingdoms how to solve their Dharma Sankat. So friends, this is a subject that goes on and on and on. See, Chanakya is not just a philosopher, but he's giving a lot of models how to run the whole kingdom. And he goes into micromanagement also of telling how to decide salaries. So many people, HR people have this, how do you, it's not the inflation cause, it's productivity. Then there is a Raja ka Dinacharya. How do you actually, what time do you wake up? You'll be surprised to know the king is supposed to wake up at 1:30. in the night, okay? Not in the afternoon. So at this particular point, time is not 1:30, it's 5:15. So what I would do is that I will rest my case over here by giving these few points of telling, there is so much to go on and on and on. I'm already sending you the materials, but just a few thoughts on leadership and management. But I would say that each one of you are matured to take up one idea, practice it, and see the benefit of it. I'll summarize it by one example. Many people have knowledge, but knowledge is not enough. You have to distill it, understand it and apply it. You apply it, you'll see that Chanakya works for you also. It's worked for me. Each one of you should become Chanakyas of your own organizations. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pillai. I think Chanakya in a capsule is what comes to mind after listening to you. I'm sure all our participants feel very enriched with all the sharing that you did in such a lucid manner. I'm going to request all of us to put on our videos and feel free to interact with Dr. Pillai. We'll be happy to answer questions, listen to a viewpoint, and let's engage in a discussion because I had requested him to leave some time for all of us to interact with him and take the benefit of some of his experiences and also correlate it to some of our experiences. In the rare event you still want to put a question in the chat box, you can do that. I will read it out for you. But otherwise, you are allowed to unmute. The provision is already given to you. Put on your video, unmute and speak up. Just ensure that the background noises are minimal so that we don't get all the home secrets out here because many of us are still working from home. Session is open for questions. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to be a little polite, pehle aap kind of a thing.
Who's going to bell the cat?
So this is Sanjeeva Reddy, sir, and I'm a national manager in a pharma company. So I have one book. I would like to show you this book. And this book bears your signature, actually.
Oh, wow.
So we have not met, but I've got this book through a friend of mine, Dr. Arun Mishra. You might be knowing with Bombay University.
Of course.
Yeah. So he told me that you know him and he got the signature from you. So thank you for that. Okay.
In fact, Dr. Arun Mishra and myself have been from the Mumbai University Philosophy Department. And we have, discussed a lot about this book. He's been such a, good friend. He promotes my books everywhere and gives the books everywhere.
Yeah. So there happened to be a discussion, interaction, and told him I want this book with the signature. So he got it for me. Thank you very much.
Give my regards to him. I will also personally thank him. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Now that Sanjeeva Reddy has broken the ice, we are open for questions.
Now the ice can make everybody cool and let's have the drink.
Hello, Radhakrishnan.
Yeah.
It was very nice to hear you. Okay, you are a Pragalbha Vakta actually, who's very knowledgeable and who's very well read. I was thinking in the last pointer of Rajrishi when you were telling me, the way the corporate governance and the way now the expectations from the board of a company are evolving, towards say more ethics and more I should say more importance to be given for the sustainable environment and society friendly initiatives to be taken.
Yeah.
So there is a certain amount of a yogi's thought and that of a king's thought, which is sort of getting merged. I mean, I do feel that somewhere the Western leadership is now evolving and, somewhere it is reaching the Eastern thought of leadership. Yeah. But if you could tell me about Chanakya Niti on sustainability, yeah, and how he expects the leaders to, return to society and work towards conserving of environment and promote ethics in the business, then I think that will complete, from my perspective, whatever I had to learn from your session. Thank you.
Thank you. So, see, there are quite a few things that we can discuss on this particular point. So, corporate governance from the Chanakya angle. So let us look at a company, maybe a PSU, okay, or any small company which is a listed company, or they have a governance model. Unfortunately, what happens? Governance has become like a compliance practice rather than deliberate and discussions. So I can see a lot of CS, what they do, just come and sign the papers and okay, done. And then you have to have an independent director. And the independent director, what does he or she do? By the way, I'm an independent director on so many companies. So what they do, they give some exam and now it's become compulsory with so many. So finally you have to go debate, discuss and come out. But I'll tell you something. Everybody's talking about only one thing, finally at the end of it, because the nature of business is to make profits, isn't it true? Okay, so they will definitely come around it. And I see a lot of family businesses, they actually don't like independent directors because there some come there and they give you some gyan and okay, theek hai saab, sign karke chale jana. But no, what is corporate governance? Okay, from a corporate stand, and I tell you what Chanakya will. A corporate governance is like a moral philosophy that is being discussed. But unfortunately, the quality of discussion depends on the guru in that discussion. So, whenever we have a board of meeting, then we say, this is the chairperson, and he has to now take. So everybody can discuss, but find the chairman is supposed to guide. And in the Chanakya era, the Raj Guru is called for all deliberation and discussions. And so everybody can discuss in detail. But one question is that, is it ethical? Is it ethical? Is it ethical? So, in the Mahabharata, there is a beautiful saying which Chanakya talks in the Arthashastra. By the way, Chanakya picks up good governance from Mahabharata, from Bhishmacharya. Okay? He says, वो सभा नहीं होती जिसमें वृद्ध ना हो, और वो वृद्ध नहीं होता जो धर्म का मार्ग न बताए, और वो धर्म नहीं होता जो प्रगति ना करे, और वो प्रगति नहीं होती जो भविष्य को ना देखे. So 4 steps of good governance and discussions in the boardroom. First of all, in a boardroom, you require a वृद्ध. वो सभा नहीं होती. No board meeting can happen without a wise person. Okay, please understand that he's not an independent director's sign. He's supposed to be wise, mature. You have to invite him. Okay. So, wo sabha. So that's why, who is going to guide the discussion? Wo sabha nahi hota. You can have discussions, deliberations, but remember the wise person tells you. Okay. So sabha nahi hoti jisme vriddha na. Now it goes to define what is the role of a vriddha. It is not just elders, just by age. Papa को बिठा दिया, पप्पा sign कर देना, तो तुम्हें सोचने जरूरत नहीं. Lot of people have seen, they make the mother as a director, and I know in some communities, and very nice intention. Okay, they actually give the first shares of the company to the mother or the spiritual guru. And they say कि तुम्हारो आशीर्वाद छे ना हमारे पास है, हमारो company नो बहु प्रगति जवानो. No. But what is the quality of the vriddha? Not signatory. He says, सभा नहीं होती जिसमें वृद्ध ना हो, वो वृद्ध नहीं होता जो धर्म का मार्ग ना बताए. See, in the discussions, he's asking the ethical question. It's not about profitability. It's saying that, is it right? Is it right? Is it right? Is it right? Okay. वो वृद्ध नहीं होता धर्म का मार्ग. Now, take the one step further. वो धर्म नहीं होता जो प्रगति ना करे. It has to be futuristic. A lot of people, especially elders, have this problem. हमारे ज़माने में. Arey, my dear, you're discussing about future plans. Okay? So what dharma नहीं था, because see, dharma cannot be about tradition and the past practices. A good dharma is also evolving, isn't it? Sustainability. You can't work your role models in the present models to evolve. Every field evolves. वो धर्म जो प्रगति न करे. Last point. वो प्रगति नहीं होती, which can't be practiced. So you have a lot of good business plans and decisions, but you can't practice it. You come out of the boardroom and say, okay, we have taken a decision. What? Implement it. How? So please understand, it starts with philosophy. It ends with the results. Wow. Look at that beauty of that discussion and deliberation. You start with philosophy, but you don't end with only philosophy. You end with results. वो प्रगति नहीं होती जो भविष्य की बात ना करे. See, when you sit and wonder, each of them is so distilled. Okay? And it doesn't just come as 4 pointers. How much years of debate and discussion the matter gotten. I'll give one simple practical example just to emphasize this point. We have a very great academician from South India. His name is Dr. Kanaka Sabapati. And I would request the BMA team to actually invite him. I can maybe, get in touch. He is on the board of so many companies. He tells Modi ji what to do, what not to do. Fantastic researcher, but very quiet, humble. So we met in Pune for one good governance conference. So I just asked, Kanaka Sabapati sir, we're sitting on breakfast, chai pe charcha, as you say. Kanaka sir, how are things happening? He's written a very interesting book called Indian Business Models. You can search it on Google, okay? Indian Business Model. And such a simple guy. He said, there's a PSU called Indian, I think Indian Shipping Corporation or something like that. I think he's on the board of that, independent director. And look at the statement he says. I went over there, wise man, very great philosopher with management skills. He said, I'm on the independent director of, Indian Shipping Corporation or one of those PSUs. Acha? Then I said, next line he mentioned was so deep. He said, after my ideas, in the first quarter, they made 200 crores profit. For the last 7 years, they were making losses. You imagine a company which is making losses, and suddenly one independent director comes from a philosophy angle, but converts the whole company into 200 crores profitability in the first quarter. Now, there is two things here. The person who is guiding is not a philosopher, also practical. And the team in that board is taking that input seriously also. And they're implementing and the result is achieved. So when you come for the next quarterly meeting, it's progressive, it's sustainable. So please understand this. For us, it's all discussion, chai pen, the independent directors get some fees. And good to have it on your CV, isn't it? I'm an independent director. Please understand with the and results. It's very, very important that we get into the good governance with a practical and sustainable angle. One last point, Chanakya says Raja's Praja is not just human beings. Praja includes animals, plants, minerals, ecosystems. So when you're taking a decision, you don't look at the benefit of the people. You ask, basically, is the ecosystem environment getting spoiled? So it's a very different philosophy. Raja is to lead not the people, but the whole kingdom. And the spoken, unspoken creatures also you have to take care. In our Indian culture, when you're cutting a tree also, the farmer first maafi mangta hai. बोलता मैं इतना ही लूंगा जितना जरूरत है, isn't it? So this is deep philosophy. In the fishing community, they don't actually fish during breeding season. So what is this? We don't have to teach. We have to just go back to the grandma and ask her, क्या करना चाहिए? माफी लेके और जितना लेना है उतना ही लो. This philosophy is there in the board meetings of Chanakya also. Thank you.
Good evening. This is Ajit Navre.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ajit ji, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm part of right now Jamnalal Bajaj. I've earlier been part of a couple of years spent in MNCs, most of the pharma, IT. So now part of JBMS. I have a question. Now we have already mentioned about new education. So, transiting, it's a good, but transiting from current to the new, what do you think a Chanakya can suggest a better way to make it more efficient way of transition?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So first of all, this education policy is the third education policy of our country. So it is not the first. Okay, so this NEP, National Education Policy 2020, but before that also it was made, it was the third time. Please understand, it's like, since you're a part of Jamnalal Bajaj and now we are all part of the Mumbai University, one of the greatest exercises that is done by every particular institution within Mumbai University or every department is actually updating the syllabus from time to time. Okay, that is what the Board of Studies does. So I'm sure now you'll also be involved in some of these meetings. What is the role of Board of Studies? To look at the past, present, and future and design the courses which are relevant. Isn't it true? So if you look at the IT department, and we only blame the whole system at superficial levels. Our people are not employable. So you blame the education system. The education system says, but there is another system. The government says, no. Forget the government, forget the national education policy. It is the people who are sitting on the Board of Studies and the directors who actually decide what to teach and most important, how to teach. So there is a lot of freedom of teaching methodologies also. So now coming back, about the national education policy, let me tell you the document, whatever you want, it is a document that is passed on by the parliament. Okay. So it's a decision taken. So deliberation discussion is over. Now we talk about implementation. Maybe a wrong example. Some people may look at it like a demonetization of the education system. What is demonetization? Decision taken. But in the long term, if you look at it, there will be some teething problems. Like any new systems coming in, it's like, even if an old mobile has to get replaced by a new mobile, there will be, teething problems. I don't know how to use it and all those things. But at the end of it, if you take it from the positive side of it, there'll be long-term benefits. Like if you look at, the kind of a budgets, 6% of GDP And I always believe that GDP 6% will not go only into infrastructure or teacher's salary. A lot of them will go into R&D. We're not missing the point. So when a defense is given a budget, since you have been, so when an MNC presents a national budget to its board, okay, it is not about just, sales and things. It's not only employees, it's also R&D. Good MNCs know that R&D is the future. So we have lot of, budgets coming for teacher training, lot of budgets going for digitalization. But we forget that one point, which probably we teachers have to make sure is R&D. How much research, innovation have to come in? And at the end of it, it's a framework, they have given it, you pick up what is best for you. And a lot of people may get into the blame game, but the reality is that future that has happened. It's happened. So now you create the future. Take the best part of it. My suggestion to you is read it, if possible with a physical printout or a digital, but make your points. I went through the whole education policy. I'm not getting into specific details. I liked one thing, introducing how to think. Okay, brain knowledge is something very part for basic school education. And you'll be surprised to know this. I'm designing the curriculum of Anvikshiki for first standard, second standard, third standard students. I've been given that responsibility. So I'm saying that why don't you look at what the education policy can do for you, but the reverse, what you can do to make that education policy better. So let us not get carried away, ye mere sar pe aa gaya hai, but ulta, mera sar use karke isko kya karna hai. So I think as intellectuals, as teachers, we can contribute and make it better. We can go into details offline because, such a beautiful document, so much to discuss. But as I tell you, every generation has a choice to make or break its future. So either it's blame game. I'll tell you one thing which probably I liked it. Till now, our education system was an examination system. Our education system was an examination, all about marks, coaching classes and all those things. Because somewhere that had a British legacy, because if you crack that civil service exam, you got into become a bureaucrat and a collector. गाँव में आज भी collector बहुत बड़ा बात होता है. So it's all about academical way of looking at things. But now it's going to be liberal arts. It's going to be. So I always say, initially education decided your career. Now you can decide your career and decide your education. So it's a very different thing. You can choose what you want. Education decided your career and life, now your life. But students should be clear what is the purpose of your life and what your career is. That is where guidance comes in, So I think it's not just about the course, it's a mindset. And 3 people have to get involved. The teachers, the family members, because the worst in the education system, the misguided missile come from the parents itself. Because they believe they are going to give a lot of education. Their unfulfilled dreams has been forced into fulfilling through their children. And the children don't care, by the way. Okay, they're living in a different world. So coming back, I feel I'm taking it positively. I'm saying, what can I contribute? And I've got a golden opportunity to actually contribute and introduce Anvikshiki in basic school curriculum. I think, wow, people will remember me and I will remember all of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
In fact, I'm happy to share with all of us here. Of course, you will get the details on email. On the 19th of August, as part of our Wednesday Wisdom webinar, we are having a panel discussion on the national education policy, where we have invited an academic leader and a corporate leader. And we are going to have this discussion for an hour on Wednesday as part of our Wednesday Wisdom webinars. I'm glad, Ajit, you brought out this topic because all of us would like to know more. Radhakrishnan gave us a beautiful perspective, and I'm sure we get to learn more as we go on. Let's continue the discussions. Those who wish to speak, please unmute, ask your question, share a viewpoint. I thought, Mr. Nori, you were trying to say something. Please go ahead. The floor is all yours.
Yeah. Mr. Radhakrishnan, I even, before that lecture, even, I have gone through this book.
Thank you.
This is lying in my house for the last so many days. Today, I had the opportunity of going through actually.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Tell me. My question to you is, there are 6,000 sutras, how to manage a kingdom and all, right? It is all about that. But there are certain qualities which are basically innate. There are certain qualities which are innate. I am talking about those qualities which can be taught. See, now the Chanakya, does he really, does he have he must have said something in what type of, how do you inculcate these qualities in them? Basically I'm looking at the training programs. Did he talk about it? how do you inculcate these qualities in people?
So thank you for this wonderful practical questions. Philosophical level, it's fine. And said, okay, this is all good. Now, how do you do it? Okay, now I'll tell you, I have done it. Okay, now I've done it. So see, I'll tell you, come from a practical experience. See, it is said, Swami Chinmayananji, one of the great spiritual gurus, he put it very nicely. He said, every generation has got two choices. Every generation has got two choices. Carry forward what is good from the past and discontinue which is irrelevant. We cannot get stuck in the past and, Chanakya was great and, we had Bhagavad Gita. That's good. We should be proud about it. But when you look at Chanakya, his generation was very different. Isn't it true? His economic models were different. The world was very different. That doesn't mean Chanakya has become totally irrelevant. So the 6,000 sutras, I've started looking at the taxation policy could be different. The people would be different. Today we have 135 crore people in India, but there are more than, 50 lakh people across the globe who still contribute to India, as an NRI or a PIO. So how do you make those policies? So I think we have to look at some of the principles of Chanakya being applied with a modern approach. So what did I do? Instead of blaming the darkness, you light a candle. I started actually teaching this to the young generation in schools and colleges. Okay, so now it's going to get introduced. But interestingly, I actually am heading a department, an institution in Mumbai University. So this is what God gives you an opportunity. I'm not a formal educationalist, isn't it? But I've become one of them. So what did I do? I'll tell you something. I took up this one model called as the Saptanga model. So remember the Saptanga model I just spoke about? But can you use it to run a company? Can you use it to run your own enterprise? And I've been doing actually training programs. And believe me, I have started globally, even in Oxfords and Cambridges. And then some of my students have actually become better leaders in the companies using the Saptanga model. So what I would say is that if somebody is interested, I only gave you a framework today. But I would say that can you run an education institution or a BMA using the Saptanga model? So let me give you a simple example. I said Saptanga for a king. I can say that it can be used for an education institution. Swami or Swamini will be the principal. Okay. Amatya are the professors. Okay. They are also teaching. Janapada are the students. Durga, the infrastructure, physical and digital today. So education is also. Durga, Kosha, finance required. It could be fees, scholarships, grants, whatever. Kosha. Danda, your support system, your administrative systems in the office. And Mitra. Today, all of us, I require Kavita ma'am requires, some of the discussion with all of us. Now think about it, an educational system can also use the model. And even if one of them is missing, so everything is fine, but the infrastructure is not fine. Okay, the Wi-Fi is not working. Everything is fine, but we don't have professors taking classes. They are on hartal. What to do? So what I'm saying is that for me, I have taken a lot of formulas and said, how do you apply it? How do you apply it? And you must have seen this in my books. It's a very practical suggestion. So what I'm saying is that don't look at 6,000 sutras. Take a one idea, one leadership quality. And I've tested, tried, and I had a major research project, okay? And this is what, we did with Shubha Joshi madam, and you would be surprised. It actually went to the government of India. Vinay Sahasrabudheji and a lot of Rajya Sabha MPs, they found out we are actually doing something constructive and practical. And you'd be surprised to know the corporates have given us money to carry forward the discussion. I remember, Kavita ma'am helping me out. We got so much money, 2 crore rupees for a new institution, so that you please carry forward research, academy industry partnerships. So I'm saying, please, if it's not practical, people will not go to the next level. So what I'm saying, I give you only one example. I just want to wind up by giving an example of Swami Chinmayananji here. So there are a lot of theories, So there is in Bhagavad Gita something called as Sthita Prajna Lakshanaha. A wise man has so many qualities, 20 qualities, let's say. So one person went and told, so many qualities of Sthita Prajna, like having so many qualities Chanakya says, the 36 qualities of leadership Chanakya talks about in the Arthashastra. He goes and says, I can't practice all these 20 qualities in Bhagavad Gita, impractical. Swami Chinmayananji said, you don't worry about 20. Take up one quality and practice that sincerely. One quality is enough, okay? And believe me, the remaining 19 will follow you. So when I say in today's deliberation, madam so beautifully asked about, how do you done, a good governance meeting in a boardroom? And I told you myself, when I am stuck up, I always remember this one thing, okay? The Saptanga model, and say, okay, Saptanga model and Vriddha Sanyogaha. Okay, so when Vriddha Sanyoga, so I always say, when I have a problem, I can call Kavita ma'am, I can call Shubha Joshi madam, or, the Vice Chancellor's office. So what's very important is that all these theories is fine, but you'll only experience a joy of success when you actually apply it. And don't be afraid of it. Try and experiment. It works. It's fine. It's worked with me. And believe me, Chanakya's knowledge is eternal. not ancient. Very, very important distinction. Don't look at it ancient knowledge. It's eternal knowledge. People like me have to interpret it in a way that the modern day people can understand it. In the philosophical world, it's called hermeneutics research methodology process. The ancient knowledge being adapted and interpreted for the application of the present. Okay? So yes, Chanakya's wisdom is there, but Chanakya never wrote corporate Chanakya. Corporate is our creation. The Americans tell us how to run businesses the American way. So I think it's more about understanding it, deliberating it, and testing it. And as they say in the corporate world, when the pilot projects goes well, let's scale it up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead, continue, please. Yeah, Indrapal ji, you can go ahead. Indrapal Singh sir is our past president and a very senior professional, having superannuated from Godrej after many years of experience. Sir, over to you.
Yeah. No, I'm delighted that we chose this subject of governing according to Chanakya's teachings and his guidance, Arthashastra and all. So I have one question for Professor Pillai, that in the European context, Machiavelli is supposed to be the advisor of the princes and the kings. Yeah. And I'm sure you would have seen his book, The Prince. Yeah. Now, would you give some brief comparison between the teachings of the Machiavelli and Chanakya? How do they differ, or how are they similar? What are your views on that?
Yeah. So first of all, I've studied both the Arthashastra, the Chanakya Niti from Indian concept, and Machiavelli, the Prince from the European concept. I think first of all, it's a wrong comparison. Okay. And there's the reason why. Number one, if you study the Prince of Machiavelli, it's more about Kootaniti. Okay. So it's more about a power game and, how to get into the power system. So it's like training a prince. I would not just say that it's right or wrong, but it's a military method. Okay. So you have to understand this very fundamental thing that in the olden days, to a lot of recent generation, we saw all the leaders were trained in military. It's like Kshatriya. So it's a Kshatriya thing. So even if you look at the Baroda Maharaja, I was in Baroda, and they're all part of the Maratha Empire that spread across India. And they very proudly put it to the world that all our young Maharajas, the so-called not so formal Maharajas, still get trained in warfare. It's very symbolic, okay? So, Hamara Raja ko talwar chalane ko aata hai. How does it matter today? That's our legacy. So in the olden days, the skill that a leader was given is how to defeat the enemy in the military method. So if you look at not only Machiavelli, there are two books. Okay, one is Machiavelli the Prince and Sun Tzu the Art of War. Both of them are getting compared with Chanakya. Okay, and both of them primarily focus on defeating the enemy and getting the power in hand. Okay, the prince is trained to become a king and maintain its power. Now let me come to the Arthashastra comparison of the Chanakya Niti. Chanakya also speaks about war, but he doesn't speak only war as the only objective of getting into power. Remember, his first concept is Raja Rishi. Okay, so first starts with creation of a philosophical game, but the last 7 books, okay, almost 4,500 sutras, okay, 4,500 sutras or 6,000 sutras is actually about warfare. But he says, Samadana, Danda, Beda, Dushman ka, Dushman dos. No, it is not that Chanakya is not spoken about what these people spoke. But he says, it is not just about Yuddha. It is not about just getting the power, but power for the right reason. So your attitude in the battle has to be a Dharma Yuddha. That's why in our concept, we have the leader as also as Yudhishthira. The Yuddha mein sthir rehta hai. Sthita prajna. Please understand, who's established in wisdom and knowledge. I don't want just a military warrior, okay? I want a military warrior with a base of dharma, Raja Rishi. That's what the difference is. Thank you.
Yes, RSR Murthy sir, please go ahead.
Yeah, Professor Pillai, I would like to know how you look at the current crop of leaders vis-a-vis the Chanakya Niti.
So I would ask you, when you say leadership, which field? Are you talking about politics or corporates or anywhere?
I would request for both, sir. Because there are very interesting leaders in the corporates. Young people like Mark Zuckerberg and all are producing empires, economic empires. And of course, we have the political leaders too.
Yeah. Because for me, leadership is beyond just politics. Okay, I feel there can be a leader in every field, and everybody is a born leader, by the way. Yeah. So let me come back. See, first of all, we have not taken leadership as a very serious skill or subject in our education system.
Right, sir.
We have started doing that. Now let us look at the current leaders. They are a product of a system that came out maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Isn't it true? And let me tell you, let's look at specifically politics to begin with. There is this whole image about, politicians is not this and all those things. I'm not here going to compare, but how many of our political leaders actually got trained in leadership? They got positions because of a system called as electoral system. Understand this? They have got elected as a leader, whether they're capable leaders, that we still are wondering, isn't it true? In fact, you'll be surprised to know that leaders actually, according to Chanakya, will be selected, not elected. Election is only one of the methods. And the trained leaders, okay, the princes who are trained or the capable leaders who are trained should be selected among the best available. So for example, one of the best training institution of leadership is the armed forces, Indian Army. Have you ever thought when the general of an Indian army, the commander retires, they wonder who is going to be the next leader? In India, we have this problem. Ye politician janega dusra kaun aayega, It's a big tension. So we always worry about election, and they know the game very well. They know how to manipulate the votes and get it done. So it is election process, not selection. In the Indian army, when a general is getting retired, you'll be surprised. There are 10 best ready. You know why? Because right from day one, they're trained in leadership. So when you give an SSB interview, after 12th standard, the sub-lieutenant of an Indian Navy or all those people, imagine at 21, when you come out, you're thought like a leader. You don't become a leader of the whole force at 21. You go through the process, you go through the training, you go through experiences. And maybe at 55, there are 10 options available. Good system or bad system? A good system is not dependent on a leader. A good system creates more leaders, and a system can throw out many leaders as per requirement. So our political system is not training leaders. Fortunately, it's coming in. So how many of the parliamentarians are actually trained leaders to become parliamentarians? So I think this thought process is going on. Now coming back to the corporate world, I think we should thank the management schools, including Jamnalal Bajaj, because those are the institutions which have thrown out leaders globally, and that's work for us. Okay, so if you look at Jamnalal Bajaj, IITs, IIMs, what have they done? And if you look at globally, we Indians are accepted leaders, selected leaders. You look at the Googles, the Microsoft, the IBMs. Okay, so our education system actually has brought out great corporate managers and leaders. Let us not, worry on this. In fact, one of my very, very close friends, Vivek Krishnan, he's a pass out of JBIMS. Okay, he's currently the managing director of Sony Pictures. I have another, Vinita Bali. I can go on and on and on, I don't want to get to the list, but what I'm saying is that as far as the corporate leaders are concerned, I think India has contributed not only for India, but globally. So I think somewhere we are doing it right. And very soon, I think we'll get it politically right. It is a generation we have to spend on to get the great leaders. Chanakya said this very nicely, or I read it somewhere. It is said, a businessman thinks 1 year ahead. A politician thinks 10 years ahead. And a teacher thinks 1 generation ahead. So I think this new education policy is not about the process or system. It's actually a vision for the next generation. So what products are going to come out of this generation, it's our moral responsibility, okay? So I think let's make it happen. And I'm sure we'll have great leaders, not only for India, not only for one specific field, but for every field globally. We have an advantage of actually sending global leaders across the globe. The corporates has proved it. Now let us prove it globally in every field. Thank you.
Sir, if I may just continue on the question, since you also referred to managers.
Yeah.
So I've always wondered. I don't go to fight a case unless I take the assistance of a lawyer, right? I don't address my health problem unless I go to a doctor.
Yeah.
I mean, you just talked about trading and all. There's the reason I'm bringing this question. But perhaps you don't go to a tax expert unless he's tax person unless he's a chartered accountant or somebody who's well experienced. So my question is, I have been in the corporates for 36 years. I have ruled the fact that corporates often don't give the same amount of importance to management education and training. It is somehow assumed that a manager can be anybody. Maybe by chance, anybody can be anybody.
Yeah.
But somehow in the field of management, this thinking process somehow seems to be much lesser. Yeah, there's a little change coming, but I thought, could I ask your views on this question I always had in mind?
Yes, I totally agree on this point, and I totally know this particular problem. Now, let me tell you, you have to understand two things. One is called a business house and a business house which is matured. Okay, so like we have, developing economies and matured economies. A matured company, and when I say matured company, which has at least gone through 3 generations, okay, a matured company will focus on management education. For example, Tata has got a management education institution, isn't it true? We have that in Pune.
True.
L&T has got a management education system, and Indian Oil has started one, and I was part of designing of the whole curriculum and all those things, a little bit, not majorly. Mahindras have a management institution in Nasik called as Bodhi Vriksha. Okay, Aditya Birla has got Jnanodaya. Okay, so why am I telling you is that, and if you look at commonly among all these things, remember that benchmark on matured businesses.
Yeah.
The matured businesses is 3 generations, they start focusing, and by the time they're not worried about the bread and butter. Understand this. A company which is a startup or only 25 years old, they can't think like this. Because that mindset requires time when you're physically free, mentally, free to actually say, let me focus on quality training. And very simple indicators are the budget that you provide for R&D and or for training. I'll tell you, don't get me wrong, but somewhere we HR guys also have to play our card very right. That training is not just a recruitment, training, orientation process. Training is the very basis. You are giving somebody a weapon to shoot, but he doesn't know how to use the weapon. So many people become managers only because of the seniority.
Yeah.
Not necessarily they have the skills or the training for that. Therefore, it's very, very important to get this thought process in the mind that it's a very important activity. And if you take it seriously, I've seen great leaders contributing as a part of the training themselves. They go and talk to the people. In matured companies, we have something called as town halls. I've seen what is taught. They may have, 1 lakh people, but they say, no, I need to talk to my people, give them the training on my vision. Okay, so I think matured countries, matured companies take training very, very seriously. I'll give you a non-corporate example also. Chinmaya Mission. I've been part of the Chinmaya Mission my side. After Swami Chinmayananji left, we had Swami Tejomayananji. Okay, he became the head of Chinmaya Mission. He said, my first focus is on training the Chinmaya Mission Acharyas. It's like an institution. So we have Swami Chinmayananji, so many teachers who are going to be managing so many temples and ashrams across the globe. And in Pune, he started a center called as Chinmaya Vibhuti. Please visit there sometime. And you know what he call it? It is training of the Swamijis, okay? And he calls it Chinmaya Vision Center. So one of the key things is training on soft skills, hard skills, technical skills. But good organizations also train them on the vision of the organization for which it has survived 3 generations. So I think matured organizations have it. But I think now India is getting into the matured economy. All of us should have it. Small or big, have a small budget for it, isn't it? But training is the future, which makes it sustainable. Thank you for your wonderful question.
Right, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can I, Professor Mani, can I share an anecdote?
Yeah, please.
By all means. By all means. Go ahead.
Professor Dr. Pillai spoke about the respect to the vice person at the governance level.
Yeah.
So this is the anecdote from Japan and specifically Honda Motor Company. Initially, we know that there was a collaboration between Honda and Hero in India. Hero Honda was the company. And about, I think, somewhere in the 80s, Professor Ishikawa, the inventor of cause-effect diagram or Ishikawa diagram, he was visiting India. And there was a telex in those days to Hero Honda here to look after him. So somebody in Hero Honda organization sent a telex back that who's going to bear the expenses of Professor Ishikawa. And I think that question was not taken well. So the Honda, Mr. Suchiro Honda, who was the chairman of the company, he wrote a telex to Mr. Munjal saying that Professor Kaoru Ishikawa, my teacher visiting India, should be given red carpet treatment and all expenses to be borne by Honda Japan. All expenses to go Honda Japan. I said, my teacher coming and you're talking about expenses, who will bear? I mean, the kind of disgust he showed in the kind of things by Honda Japan, even though they were 49% collaboration and so on. The amount of respect they gave to Vruddha person, wise and Vruddha gentle person in the board, that comes from this anecdote. And one should never forget that in a country where teachers are respected, Japan is one of the few in that, they are bound to go ahead of the others. And what is the respect we accord to our teachers here in India?
Nothing.
Probably they are the worst paid, worst heard, and probably with no voice. So if we don't make progress, I mean, it is expected, because where is the wisdom heard? Thank you. I mean, allowing me to share this anecdote, because it has stayed in my memory for many years. How many corporates today, if their former teacher goes to the US, will write to their subsidiary that my teacher coming so and so, please bear all expenses, give the red treatment and send the bill directly to me.
Absolutely. In fact, that's exactly the reason why Japan is much ahead. They focus on training, they focus on R&D, and of course, there is a great working culture. In India, we have to redefine our culture. Everything. Our work ethics has to change, productivity has to change, competition has to change, comparison has to change, and most important, our teachers need to be respected not only financially. Okay, please invite them into your boardrooms. See, it's very, very important. Somewhere the gap between, academic and industry, Kavita ma'am, I'm so glad that you're part of BMA. I'm so happy because you can understand both the perspectives. I always tell my university staff and professors and, all that management, why do you cry for money here? Bombay is a financial capital, and all the finance tycoons are sitting over there. What they require is just respect. Go to them. Don't just call them as a chief guest. Discuss with some idea. Bombay University can actually be the R&D center, the thought leaders for the corporate leaders here. Isn't it true? And what do? We send our students abroad. So what I'm saying is perfect. Let's respect academicians. And the best respect an academician or the thinker or a scholar can get is not just finances, but taking their advice seriously and implementing it, isn't it? So I think that's what we are also working on in our APIs in Mumbai University. We also have a column of, academy industry partnership, and it's also called as outreach programs. So it's all policy framework, but how many people like Kavita ma'am are actually doing it, And, I was requesting Kavita ma'am also, okay, why don't we put up, Jamnalal Bajaj logo also? And I'm so glad President sir, he accepted it. So because it's a strength mutual. Please don't think, because we academicians sometimes, when we go to the industry, we think, but at the same time, it's mutual respect. So we have a logo of JBIMS, logo of, BMA. So I think, isn't it so good? So I think it is the mutual respect that will take the Vruddha Sanyoga forward. And last point, all of you, okay, I have a request to all of you that after retirement from the formal job also, you can be Vruddha to the startup community. The good news is that after 60, we are all healthy, thanks to the medical advancement. But the younger generation, believe me, I feel a lot of danger because it's misguided missile. There are under 20, 25 people. Startup karna hai, kya karna hai, pata nahi. There is a lost generation because lot of opportunity, but no clarity. Please understand that the startup culture is the most dangerous. It's an opportunity, but no clarity. But they keep trying without having a guide. All of you can guide. Please, I request BMA to do some, mentoring sessions for the younger generation. They're in thousands. So what I'm saying is that this matured people, 15, 20 of them, take 5 companies, okay? And believe me, they are ready to work 24/7. You have to just give them the direction. The future of our country depends on Vruddha and the Sanyoga. So as they say, if the horse doesn't go to the pond, let the pond go to the hotel. So we are having wise. Let's go. Maybe Kavita ma'am can think about all the experts at BMA guiding 5 students at Jamnalal Bajaj Institute. We don't have to do anything. It's not even a process. So it's 2 ways. Teachers not getting respect, but sometimes teachers don't respect their own wisdom and knowledge. Hum to wahi sikhate hai. But when you go to a boardroom, believe me, what you say in a classroom is taken very seriously and applied the next day. The application of the student will happen after 20 years when he becomes a leader or a manager. Isn't it true? But in a boardroom, the teacher's idea is implemented then and there. And remember, Kanaka Sabhapati's example, he just gave that one idea from an academic angle that was pure Vruddha Sanyoga. Those people applied it in 1 quarter, you made 200 crore profit. So if you want to see the ignition of fire, it's 2-way Vruddha Sanyoga. Let us go to the children. They're waiting for us. What a beautiful, lucky generation. Okay, but they require with the same guidance from us. Let's take our steps and do our duty towards the next generation. Thank you.
Sir, this is Savita from JBIMS. May I have one small question?
Yes,
I actually work as a counselor for the institute.
Wow.
And my question is how to encourage, does Chanakya comment on how to encourage to keep the consistency in quest for knowledge by the students? Because I come across quite a few students that they start with great jor-shore and then suddenly there is lethargy in them. So how can they be encouraged for consistent quest for knowledge, not only during the course, but even after starting their work?
Okay. So,
thank you, sir.
So very nice question, Savita ji. In Sanskrit, this is called Arambhe Shuraha.
Correct. Yes.
Hey, chala, chala, karuya, karuya.
Yes, yes, very true.
So, energy, but, no direction.
Correct, correct.
So, Swami Chinmaya used to say, youth are not useless, they're useless.
Right.
They are not careless, they're caredless. Okay.
Correct.
I think that's exactly where we need to be in touch with our young generation beyond alumni meetings.
Right.
So what is it is true. Once they're passed out, we focus on the next batch. Isn't it true?
True.
And
true.
So somewhere, in our system is batch by batch. It's like a factory producing, first batch nikal gaya market mein, dusra batch, chalo. So it's like a batch.
May I intervene, sir? I have really good experience on this. Even some of the alumni who have consulted me and have taken counseling have kept in touch with me.
See, that's exactly the point. And did you see the difference? Those students who are in touch with you is not Arambe Shuraha. They shure continuously. And whenever they are stuck, then you are there to guide them.
Yes.
See, this is pure academic industry partnership. See, the olden days was like this. Even though Raja Ram is out of Gurukul, okay, Yogi Vashishta ji is in touch with him regularly.
Correct.
Okay, so Rama has got a Dharma Sankara, he'll go to the Guru. So Gurukul is not like a modern education system. There's 10+2 and then graduation, tata, bye-bye. We'll meet up on WhatsApp groups. It is the place where you'll get guidance. Now coming to Chanakya, how do the students upgrade themselves? Let me tell you, life mein dhakka khayenge, khud upgrade ho jayenge. Because today is a generation where if your old, certificate is useless already. That's why continuous upgradation is a part of your professional requirements.
Right, right.
What got you here may not get you there. So the smart guys keep upgrading themselves, professional courses, digital courses, whatever it is, So I think if they don't have that attitude, life will teach them. They'll become mediocre and they'll be out of the job. So remember one thing, those who are upgrading themselves professionally will never have layoffs.
Correct.
Remember, those people are stuck up and become, मेरे को salary मिलता है, बोला ठीक है अभी तो अभी salary नहीं दे सकता, हम लोग जा भैया मेरे. So I think the smarter guys understand upgrading is not a choice. It's a basic requirement. Okay. So professional upgrading. Second important thing is very, very important that, Chanakya said that every day, okay, this king, okay, the most busiest person in the kingdom should study Swadhyaya for 3 hours every day. 3 hours. हम लोग तो आधा घंटा नहीं पढ़ते. Remember, he says if you are not reading and studying every day as a leader, okay, you are irrelevant. Please understand, Swadhyaya continues. Swadhyaya is only for giving the exams, self-study for giving exams. After exam, nothing. But he says what you gave in your exams, understood theoretically, you will understand more when you become a leader. And you imagine you are a practical leader along with theory base. Many times, aage part, piche sapat. The reality is that you are continuously applying your theories. So therefore, 3 hours of study, and believe me, another 3 hours of discussion with experts on a daily basis. Book number 1, chapter number 19 of Arthashastra, it is called Raja Pranidhihi. राजा को कैसे व्यवहार करना चाहिए, राजा का दिनचर्या. जब हम बच्चों को बोलते हैं पढ़ाई करो every day, okay, that is a daily timetable in 10th standard or 12th standard, okay? But this is minimum to be done to maintain your kingship. If you're not studying, Guru आके बोलेगा, sorry sir, आपको आता नहीं है, अभी निकल जाइए, I'll replace you. So I think life today will teach them that upgradation is not a choice, it's important. So if you're not updated, you're already outdated. Thank you. Please counsel them to keep doing professional courses at JBIMS or wherever else,
Yes, sir. I always do that. Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. As they always say, all good things have to come to an end. I don't say that. I only say we have to pause somewhere and move ahead. And I think Dr. Pillai has given us enough of references. He's virtually quoted Chanakya Niti, Arthashastra, that too in Sanskrit. I was almost tempted to, wonder whether such sessions should be done in Sanskrit. So that will motivate us to study Sanskrit a little more, which is our own heritage in more ways than one. As indicated, his books are absolute bestsellers, very, very concise, very enjoyable reading these books. And I would urge those who haven't. We already saw some people proudly displaying the books in their personal collection along with his autograph. We'll, of course, try to help you make these available even through the BMA platform. We'll get back to you on this through our communication channels later. As we always do, we try to capture a memory of the event that all of you are at today. Let's have your videos on so that we can capture one picture which will serve as a memory of this wonderful session. After which I'll request Dr. Kavita to do the wrap up of this whole program. While you get ready, which is a half a minute, which we allow you to get ready for the camera, let me tell you that the next Wednesday webinar is going to be on how to increase profits by cutting costs. So that's a very interesting dimension, as you see, and it's being done by Dr. Anil Joshi. That's going to happen on the 12th of August. 19th August is going to be the session on the National Education Policy. And 26th August, and I'm so glad, Dr. Pillai, you said this, we're going to have a session on life coaching and mentoring the younger generation. And this is happening in collaboration with the International Coach Federation. More details will reach you in some time over the email networks. Next Friday, Fundamentals program is on how to hack your career. Sounds interesting, isn't it? How to hack your career through design thinking. That's the 14th of August, and 21st of August is a session which is coming up where we are looking at negotiation and problem solving and how to take care of difficult people in an organization. This is being done by one of our own members, Dr. Anil Garg. So some of this will, of course, come to you as part of the mailers. I'm glad everybody's already ready for the group photograph, armed with your smiles. Dr. Stephen De Silva, would you like to put on your video? Is there some technical problem, or can we go ahead? All right, so we have a wonderful digital team led by Hoini. Of course, she heads marketing, but and a digital expert herself. She's going to capture this memory for us. Over to you, Hoini.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. And back to Dr. Kavita.
So, धन्यवादः Dr. Radhakrishnan Pillai Mahodayah. अतीव सुन्दरः भाषणः अद्य वयं सर्वे श्रुतवन्तः. बहवः विविधाः विषयाः भवान् उक्तवान्. आर्यचाणक्य एकमेवाद्वितीयः शिक्षकः स एव कार्यकारणभावः चन्द्रगुप्तकृते. वयं सर्वे बहु आनन्दिताः आसन्. Thank you, Dr. Radhakrishnan Pillai, for such an enlightening session. And I'm sure all of us, we are motivated to read not only your books, but the scriptures, which will help us to understand our ancient wisdom and also how to apply it. And as many of us are in academics, I'm sure the relation between the ancient Indian scriptures, wisdom, and application to the modern Indian corporate world, how do we do that? I think that can be a mission in itself. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation today and giving us 2 hours, which is really very engrossing and very, very meaningful for all of us. Thank you so much. I'll thank all our past presidents who are here with us for this particular program. All my faculty colleagues at JBIMS who have made time to come to these very interesting programs. and all other participants who are here for this particular talk by Dr. Radhakrishnan Pillai. Thank you so much, and see you on next Wednesday for Wednesday webinars. Thank you so much.